Space, the final frontier.
This is the podcast, State of the Federation.
Its continuing mission.
To preview strange new ships.
To seek out new builds and new combinations.
To boldly go where no show has gone before.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the Federation, and welcome to episode 41 of State of the Federation. I am your wonderful, lovely, and ruggedly handsome host, Delta Angelfire here, bringing you the latest and greatest in Star Trek Attack Wing news and strategy. And it's a pleasure to have you all here today. I am, of course, joined by my usual suspect co-hosts. We have the illustrious David. David, how are you doing this week?
My head hurts. Nothing in my life is the same. And I don't just mean about Star Trek. My local game store was sold.
What?
Yeah. It's still going to be a game store, but my in for all things has been changed. Anyways. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, I know.
I'm
sad.
That.
This happened on Wednesday, and then all of the Borg rulings, all of the Star Trek changes happened Thursday morning. So in like the span of 14 hours, my entire world, gaming-wise, flipped around.
Rome wasn't built in a day.
But it was toppled in a day. Hey, I'm actually excited. This is a great time to be playing Star Trek. So this is an episode I'm looking forward to.
And of course, we also have our wonderful friend Tucker. Tucker, how are you doing today?
Will you give me leave to talk about something that perhaps I shouldn't talk about?
Is this about flaming people on the internet?
Maybe.
You've got 60 seconds. Go.
Okay, I'm gonna read a post from Board Game Geek. You ready?
Go for it.
Okay, here we go. Sorry. Well, I'm going to read two.
60 seconds, not that long.
Oh, hush. One from Gavin Siri. Quote, "Told you so, and I was right regarding fighters counting for the 3-ship minimum. State of the Federation, guys. Perhaps a little less arrogance in the future would make these rules debates more civil." Or from SotF Baldrick. "Let us not feed the troll. That's what Tucker is doing. He did when half the internet told him he cheated by colluding at regionals. He was wrong then, just as he is wrong now. He isn't going to back down because he feeds on the argument. If you have read his past posts or ever watched his little show, you can see it. So just let him be, and Worf will prove him wrong again." Okay, here is my response. I would like to state for the record that this is my response and not State of the Federation's response. Cut it the fuck out. You are the people making this debate uncivil. There, I'm done.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's...
Okay, anyway, also...
Yeah, seems like some mean posts for a debate on whether or not cloaked minds were affected by fighters.
Which was far less clear than people were making out to be. So,
yeah.
Also,
it really
just to the readership in general, or the viewership, I should say, this is your complimentary 5-day warning that Sunday is Mother's Day.
Oh.
Go shopping now.
Will,
Order
did
from
you forget?
Amazon now.
Will,
Hey,
did you forget?
hey, I was clever because I brought my mom something home for her birthday, which was yesterday.
Oh. That's probably good.
Ha! I win. Chocolate always does good things. But,
True.
Chocolate's pretty
Chocolate
solid.
and flowers.
Didn't think you were going to get a moral lesson today, guys. Be good to your mothers.
And that's good advice any time of year.
Indeed. All right. But yes, on the show today, our world, maybe not as badly as David's, but our galaxy of Star Trek has been turned a little bit upside down or a little bit on its head, maybe kind of sideways. Big rulings came out Thursday. We were left over the weekend to stew. They finally got us some clarifications yesterday, so we do have a good amount of stuff to talk about today, which is thankful. And, where to start? The campaign against the Borg. Poor Borg. Alright. The biggest news that came out on Thursday, debatable, of course, with the fighters, which we will not be discussing today just quite yet. But the Borg in general right now, because I think that's the biggest change to the game so far. And to what degree it's a change to the game is what we are going to be talking about today. So, this is what changed for the Borg, and I have it on my handy, wonderful screen right here. The following changes should bring more variety of factions and ship types to the current environment. Ships with a 360-degree firing arc printed on their ship token may only fire their primary weapons up to range 2 when firing from that arc, unless granted the ability to fire at range 3 from a specific upgrade card. Part 2. When performing a spin maneuver, the player places the selected template in the ship's base as if doing a straight maneuver. After finishing the movement, the player places the blah 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 blah, does the spin to the right or left. So that the edge, yeah. Man, I didn't realize how long the actual spin rules were to talk about. But instead of spinning before you move, now you spin after you move. So those are the two changes that affect Borg most heavily, even though they didn't specifically say Borg. Borg are, of course, the most prominent faction with 360-degree arcs, and with the only faction with a spin maneuver. What does this
Borg
mean?
Plus Deep Space Nine, really.
And Deep Space Nine already couldn't fire. So it got asked and clarified. I thought this was not going to be the case, but apparently Tarek Nor's special ability still lets it fire at range 360. So literally this only affects Borg, because DS9 can only fire at range 2 anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
At least until we get a bigger 360 ship from... I don't know who would even get another 360 ship from.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, I think at this point we're not going to see any more, just because it would result in a lot of... I'm not in a very generous mood today. Whining.
Teeth.
Yeah, whining.
Yes. All right. So, reducing from range 3 to range 2. We've seen this before in the additional rules for regionals and nationals. They were a sector condition. Now they are being put into... essentially put into play full time. There was a little bit more to the sector condition, but this is essentially what it did.
And I think you mentioned that. So can we start in on why I don't think this is that bad? Simply because that's actually a pretty good starting place.
Go for it.
So obviously with this segment, probably I have a few things to say on the subject. The number one reason why I don't think this ruling is so bad is everybody's talking about, oh, no more range 3. For every single person who played in regionals or nationals, they will tell you in that sector condition where Borg was limited to range 3, it really didn't hurt them that much. Having a native 360 is still really, really good, especially when the only other factions that can get them really have to pay a premium for them, with the exception of maybe Voyager, depending on how you look at that. So this change is one of the ones that's much sort of lauded. I really don't think it's going to matter, especially, by the way, if we see at Worlds, we still see these same sector conditions, because if we go into that nebula again, then the Borg effectively haven't been changed at all.
Mm-hmm. Because we don't have the full supplies for Worlds yet. They haven't come out with the rules yet. They just came out with the format. So.
And by format, he means the actual round format. We still don't know what the play format is.
Oh, yeah, that is correct. Should be clarified. But yeah, I would agree that the limiting to range 2 isn't that bad of a thing. If you still consider just how much area that covers, range 3 in a 90-degree arc covered about as much as what? Two range 2 bands, maybe, and if you consider 360 arc, it's basically like having 3 additional range 2 bands and 3 additional range 1 bands. So you're still getting at least like what, 50% more coverage, 100% more coverage, maybe.
I should, I really should have mapped that out. That's
David, you're the math major. Didn't you math this out?
Yeah, I mean, you're dealing with circles, but
Circles are
slightly
such a
off
thing.
circles. Well, because the center isn't a point; it's a square or a rectangle. It's essentially the difference of it's not that big of a difference between range 2 and 3.
Yeah, no.
Borg are still good with the arc. That's all we're trying to say.
Yeah, and I mean, I could actually, if you want me to, I could math that out. If you can tell me how long a range band is in inches, it's like 4 inches, right?
It's 4 inches.
And then a ship is what, 1 inch on a side?
Yeah.
All right, give me a second. I'll math that out.
I just don't.
This,
But yeah,
this is good practice for me because it's actually my job to know these sort of questions.
Cool.
I teach SAT prep, so.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, so it's not like the Borg are permanently stuck at range 2 either. Any weapon that goes out to range 3 and can be fired from them will go out to range 3 in every direction. Most notably, one of my favorites, of course, is now the Romulan Disruptor, which doesn't even require a target lock. It's just to disable, roll 5 dice, and get an extra hit.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's good for everybody.
The secondary weapons, I mean, they're not limited at all. Magnetometric guided charges, which people hated, still functions at all range bands, and in a 360.
There's still plenty of options there. But no, the real big change here is going to be your spin maneuver. So, ships in this game have a general kind of location where they will probably end up after moving. For I'm gonna bring up paint because I love paint, and this would be a perfect opportunity to use something with it. So, let's say you have a lovely little starship right in the middle of nowhere. We're gonna make it space, so we're gonna paint it black. You have a lovely little.
I see your red ship and sorry.
We have a lovely little Romulan ship in a little square here. Oop, let me get rid of that. And from the place where it starts, you basically have, well, what is it? I lost it. I killed everything. Oh my gosh, I'm terrible at doing paint on this fly. Romulan starship. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. It can do turns this way, 2, 3. It can do banks that way, 2, 3, 4. You basically have kind of a little cone, which is every possible area that your ship could end up in. If you are any other ship somewhere in the rest of the Alpha Quadrant, what you're looking at here is a firing arc solution that is kind of like, oh, I just have to make my firing arc take up as much of this arc of possibility as is possible. So predictability of movement is an easy way to get your firing arcs. Back to the good old Borg. Our little square is now a Borg ship. Before it had, it could go forward, it could go backwards, it could go right, it could go left. All of a sudden, that arc is not really any smaller on the north side, but now it goes wide all the way back. We've got essentially like 200% more area that you have to be able to cover with your arc, and your arcs are generally, you know, not that big. Like, oh no, I'm too close, I missed the right one, or oh, I turned the wrong way, I missed the left one.
So I actually figured out exactly how big they are, if you would like to hear.
Oh, go for it.
Ready for some math? Here we go. Okay. So according to my calculations, and David, stop me if any of this sounds wrong. If you assume a 360-degree arc, okay, the sort of ring that constitutes range 3 has an area of 80 pi square inches. The middle ring of range 2 has 48 pi square inches, and range 1 has 16 pi minus 1 square inches. That minus 1 is your ship's location. Which means that if you have a 90-degree forward arc, your coverage is 20 pi in range 3, 12 pi in range 2, and 4 pi minus 0.25 in range 1 for essentially, as far as you care, about 36 pi square inches. Okay? Whereas a Borg ship at range 2 only is 48 pi plus 16 pi minus 1 for effectively 64 pi minus 1 square inches. So a Borg ship with limited to a range 2 arc still has almost twice as much coverage as a 90 and only a little bit less than a 180.
Cool.
Does that track, David?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks.
It might not be 100% accurate, so don't quote us on that, but it's pretty darn close.
You still have more options for shooting people at range 1 and 2 than most other ships have.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes.
Many more. Twice as many.
So this helps, of course, back when there was Borg that could move in 4 directions, because all you had to do was just sit back, get right up next to them, say, "Hello there, I am evil, ugly Borg. Oh look, you can be anywhere in that direction. Well, I can shoot anywhere in that direction too. Oh, it's dangerous." My paint skills are amazing, guys. These graphical interfaces are the best assistants, you know. But yes, now the major change, of course, is that, oh look, you can only move forward and backwards. Without being able to move left and right, then all we need to do is either have a nice, lovely firing arc that goes from the side to cover most everything, or pretty much straight from the front would be fine as well, because you cannot move to the side far enough to just be like, "Oh, hey, look, I am outside of your arc right here now. Ooh, I am special and magical." So Borg got a whole lot more predictable in their movements. Poor little lonely Borg in the middle of space.
But there are some ways to mitigate that, including one of my top 5 elite talents that just got so much better. Which is, for those of you who have not watched the show, engage.
It returns.
Will,
Yes,
draw
sir.
me up a diamond maneuver dial.
A diamond maneuver dial.
Just find a picture of one. Look, draw me one forward, one back, one left, and or one spin left, one spin right, all green, and a 2 forward green.
To the left. To the right. Wait, am I doing to the left and the right? Forward.
Yes.
And backwards.
Okay. So here's the deal, guys.
These are our diamonds.
The diamond. So the tactical cube was put out to pasture by the 50-point ruling. The general thought is, oh, this is going to hurt all the Borg. No, this hurts one Borg ship, which that's still played, which is Sphere. The Sphere does not have green spin maneuvers. This is a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because you can do this with a diamond. You can take a 1 spin to the left, and then engage and go 2 forward.
Up. And to the side. Look, I'm even farther away now than I was originally.
Right. In other words, Borg used to move like rooks. Now, they pay 4 extra points and move like knights. And let me tell you, as a chess player, people are so much worse at predicting knight movement.
Yeah. Though the notion there is that you have to have a captain who's going to have the elite talent slot, but most people do. Most people are running Picard or Ducat on their diamonds.
So even if I'm not, this is another thing I checked. I can run Officer Exchange Program. Okay? Let's just use the example of if I wanted to, I could do mirror. Is I think the best faction for this. Let me just double check that. I need to just double check how many the feds have. Yes, mirror is the faction that does this. You take Officer Exchange Program Mirror Borg. You run Karen Nerys or Ben Sisko or Worf, Admiral Worf formerly. Probably one of them is going to be Worf. All of which are 2-point captains with an elite talent slot. Officer Exchange makes them 1 point, and then bam, you've got captain skill and engage on your ships for a grand total of 5 points.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, you can do that with better captains. If you do Officer Exchange Federation Borg, you can actually fit Picard 9 and Mr. Spock on there and get some free action going. In fact, Ducat is only 5 points base, I believe. So you could do him and engage for 10 points, which fits nicely at 50 points total on a diamond. Or you have another option for crazy movement. Tell me, Will, if I did a 1 spin, would that be the same as turning my ship and then doing a 1 sensor echo to the side?
You'd be off by about 0.5 millimeter, but essentially, yes.
Well, Will, since you were the one who thought of this, can you think of any crew members that means the Borg might want these days?
Well, there is one particular very handsome and dashing man that is skilled both in helmsmanship and in fencing that might be able to help you out here.
I wonder who you could possibly mean. Oh my.
Of course, everybody's favorite, Mr. Sulu. And not just any Sulu, we're talking about the badass Sulu from the movie prize, Tiny Prize. Not the Tiny Prize, it's actually just an Enterprise because it's a properly sized release.
Yeah, it's the refit.
His action, of course, if you don't know, is after you perform a green maneuver, you take an action and you can do a 1 sensor echo. And that's pretty much it. You know, you don't have to be cloaked, you don't have to do anything, it just takes your action. So if you're moving, you know, you're just doing your 1 forward and you're right there. If you're doing just forward maneuvers, then you can sensor echo to the side just for your little 1. And that gives you a good place to go. If you do a spin, just in case you want to be tricky about it, let's just forget these guys. You can do the spin, and you can from here you can sensor echo up, or you can sensor echo back to right where you came from. You are essentially doing a full stop maneuver.
But you're moving, which triggers movement effects, which can be good or bad.
Indeed.
So,
and not to mention, you can with sensor echo, you can of course fudge things a little bit. So let's say I want to go a little to the left, a little bit to the right. These things help a lot.
Now, here's the other thing I wanted to mention. Just by the way. You know how I said that I mentioned Mr. Spock? It's a free action captain. So with Officer Exchange Program, Spock is 3, Engage is 4, and Federation crew don't pay a faction penalty to go on board ships. You know who fits in that last 3 points? Sulu.
Sulu!
So you could conceivably, on that 50-point ship, go forward, choose whether you want to engage or sensor echo, and still get a target lock.
Or do both engage and sensor echo.
You can't do that.
Well, you could sensor echo and then engage.
Sulu is an action.
Yes. How are you target locking? Oh, you're talking about Picard.
Yeah. In other words, Spock gives me free action to target lock, but I can't take 2 actions base like that. I just can't.
Unless you're using Mr. Mirror Spock. I don't know if you could fit that easily, but
yeah, I think he actually comes in. I think 5 points, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And
Just
you
use
can't.
that.
Yeah, and you can't officer exchange program him either.
That'd be fun, though.
Unfortunately, that's not quite as good.
Mm-hmm.
We'll just have to do with basically with movie crew on a Borg Okada Hideran.
Yeah.
So essentially, at this point, still within 50 points and still with a very quality captain, we've created a ship that just has ridiculously impossible to predict movement on a Borg chassis, even with the new rules.
Because let's not forget, in addition to all these fancy maneuvers, you could always still just go straight up 3 forward or 2 backwards and still keep your actions.
4 forward is white, I believe, on a Borg starship.
Oh yeah, that's true.
So yeah, you have all and you still have your white backups. You know, you still have a ton of options, and you can choose just to straight up scan and target lock, or on your Picard sphere, battle stations and target lock. You don't have to do any crazy engage stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So you have all these options available, and guys, if you're looking for a fleet for your local OP, maybe not for Q Continuum because of some of the screwy things that happen there, you could do a lot worse than generic Octahedron. This is a 120 point. Generic Octahedron, Picard 9 engage, generic Okada Hideran, Spock engage Sulu, and a squad of Federation attack fighters.
It's the next Picard Ducat balls.
Mm-hmm.
Probably better. I'm pretty sure it's better, actually.
And actually, honestly, if you wanted to cut Sulu, you could just make that Picard and Ducat on Okada Hiderans with engage and a set of fighters.
Right.
Or, actually, just while I'm spitballing here, so Spock with Officer Exchange is 3 points, but even with the Fed Officer Exchange up, you want to know who else is 3 points, is Captain Admiral Worf. So you could have Worf engage Sulu, and instead of having that free target lock, you could have the option to... oh no, that doesn't work on fighters anymore. Never mind. Ignore me.
Yeah, that was one of those fighter rulings that we're going to be getting into at another time. But
Although, actually, if you wanted to replace those fighters with an assimilated Burrell, you would still fit, and that can benefit from Captain Admiral Worf.
So, Borg still definitely have movement options. It's just now you're probably going to want to add a little bit of extra movement onto them just to make it a little better. Even if you don't want to spend those points or you don't want to spend the actions for those, just the very basic, the basic problem that existed before Borg, or existed when Borg came into existence, is basically the joust. So let's say I have my wonderful little, we're going to create a very primitive Klingon ship that looks very much like an arrow. Bam. Your Klingon ship...
I'll throw out one more option. Admiral Forrest is still not a bad choice for Borg. He's not the best choice in the world, but I think he's playable.
One turns might not get you quite in the same direction as your sensor echoes, but it does give you additional options. The 1 banks will probably help you the most, especially after a turn. So the best thing that you're going to want to do now, which is hurting people in the joust, is you go forward, and instead of just doing forward, you do your 3 spins. So that means instead of facing straight forward and back, you now go either you're now either going to the left or to the right, and then whoever is jousting you still has the same problem. If they point left, they miss you if you go right. If they go right, they miss you if you go left. You're still playing the 50-50 flip a coin game, and no matter which way, if you choose whether that person wins or loses, the Borg still gets to shoot at you. And that is still a thing. That is still a thing that exists. Also, I'm kind of a fan of putting the transwarp drive on Borg ships, because number one, it doesn't take an action, And number two, if you're good at judging distances, I usually am, but you can tell the difference between if a maneuver is going to get you into range 3 or not. So if you're not going to be in range 3, you keep the 4. If you're going to be exactly at range 3, you boost it up to a 6, and all of a sudden you're in range 2 and ready to fire.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the big question. Bane of Borg wants to know, am I going to still play Borg? Is David still going to play Borg? Is Tucker still going to play Borg? I have not decided what's going on for Worlds yet. We are still going over the very finer points that all of this chaos has started. And I'll go back. We'll go into a little bit more of that in the second part. But I believe I will still be playing some sort of Borg. Not pure Borg. I think I will maybe be playing one Borg ship for the arcs and the firing, and then another ship to complement it that's just as huge. But I do not believe that Borg are by any means dead. David? Tucker?
I'll go, because I think Tucker another moment to think. But for me, with the way my venue's currently constructed, I think this has hurt Borg enough that Borg are sitting on the shelf until I can get the rules sorted out. And the reason I say that is right now everything except Borg is unlimited, meaning we can mix and match whatever we want, but Borg is faction pure, and we haven't had a chance to meet and talk about things as they are. And I think right now those rules worked beforehand, now they don't. So at the moment, Borg sit on the shelf. Going forward, we'll see. But the Borg aren't dead by any means. Do you have to be a little more creative with them? Yes. I think I said something in the community. If anything, these rules are just going to make better players rise to the top.
Mm-hmm. For those players that did nothing but play like Picard Ducat spheres in their local meta, I don't think they're going to see their tactic change at all, because all they did in the first place was head straight at you and start just shooting at you with the best dice.
Yeah. Now those players can be outflanked, and those players can lose to better players. They don't win because they're taking Borg. So Borg are not an I win button anymore, but in the right hands, they will win games. That's where I'm at. And I think all of us have the right hands to win with the Borg, but I think all of us have the right hands to win with just about anything. Don't make us play Ferengi, please.
Tholian Pure.
Oh my God, Will! It will never be time for Tholian Pure.
It is always time for Tholian Pure in the Mutara Nebula. Tucker, what do you think?
So, my thoughts on this are a little bit more complicated. Obviously, I'm the biggest Borg fan on the show, and I think a lot of people have been waiting to sort of. There are a lot of people, I think, who are sort of. There really is no more polite expression I can think of for this. Getting ready to rub one out to my crying and whining, either because I'm so disappointed or because I'll start complaining exactly as they predict. The answer is the fleet I just mentioned, the double sphere fleet with fighter backup, is probably going to be my go-to fleet when I don't want to think about what I'm running in an OP. Obviously, I don't think it's going to be great for Q Continuum. This is probably not what I'm going to play at Nationals, Worlds. If I do compete in Worlds, that's sort of becoming an open question just because it occurred to me the other day that I couldn't cover Worlds if I was playing in it due to their electronic device ban, so I may not be doing that. I will be present. I'm not sure if I'm playing. Anyway, but that's off topic. The answer is Borg are still very viable for all the reasons Will and Dave mentioned, all the reasons we've talked about today. And frankly, I know I speak for a lot of people in that I am not a super rich attack wing player. I do not have one of every ship. I own, I think, one. Aside from the starter and the blind buy, I own 2 Romulan vessels. One of them I got was the Galgathong because my mom is a fan of the classic series and I play with her sometimes. Guess what the other one was?
Enterprise?
No.
Oh, Romulan. We're talking about Romulans.
Yeah. Happiness, obviously.
Yes.
It's like I own 1 Dominion ship, besides the blind buy. Guess which one?
The Coronet?
Coronet.
Whichever one Weiyun came on. God, you guys. Anyway.
Dang it.
No.
Anyway, but it's like, so the fact of the matter is, to a certain extent, I don't have a choice. I mean, I'm a graduate student. I am stuck playing with the ships I have. And so I'm probably going to keep playing Borg just because I don't have to go out and buy a whole bunch of other stuff. And I think, again, they're going to be perfectly viable. With that said, there is one major exception, which is the places that force people to play faction pure. At this point, I think that is probably one of the worst and most unhealthy things for the game. I will not harp on that, as I have made that clear other places, and this ruling just makes that worse. Because, as David said, it is just affecting Borg players just even more unfairly than it already was.
Because they don't even have half their upgrades they can't even take because they're 8 to 10 points.
Exactly. So, at that point, get off your high horse, show your true colors, bang Borg, and go back to faction mixing like the rest of us. Like that's what that's about. That's literally what that's about.
50-point cap. If you're gonna go faction pure, get rid of the 50-point cap.
Well, that too. I mean, and that makes Borg play like Borg. They've got one scary ship with a bunch of scary upgrades, but you can band together and defeat them heroically.
Yeah. And the 3-ship minimum, but that's a
well, I mean, if you get rid of the point cap for Borg, they will run a scout, or they'll run a scout, or they'll run like 2 scout cubes and then like a dreadnought.
Yeah.
Or like what?
Or scout and fight. Well, it can't take fighters if you're doing like pure stuff.
No, I know.
That would be
Actually,
interesting to see the Borg run, though.
Yeah, no, I agree. Is Scout Cube still the cheapest Borg ship? With all the assimilated vessels, I can't remember.
Burrell.
Same price.
Is it?
No, actually, the Burrell is more expensive. It's 2 points more.
Really?
Yeah. 24, 26 versus 22, 24.
Yeah.
That would have been the smallest of the assimilated then.
Yeah, okay. So it's like, I could see 76-point Dreadnought, 44 points for 2 generic Scout Cubes. Something like that. That might be, and that, I think that, honestly, I think you'll end up having more fun if you allow that. Because Borg Pure is just far from broken at this point. It's not that much worse than Federation Pure with dorsal phaser arrays. They're a little tougher, but they also don't roll any defense dice, so it's basically a wash.
Mm-hmm. Assuming you can actually roll your defense dice for anything.
That's true.
This was my favorite part about Borg, is I didn't have to worry about rolling my defense dice because they always sucked.
You knew exactly what your expected value was. 0.
That's correct. And that's still a fun thing about Borg. I mean, look, Borg and Borg are still terrifying in a joust, and frankly, a lot of players don't know better than not to joust.
I'm still convinced that 80% of attack wing players only know how to joust.
Right, and to be fair, that's not their fault, especially if you started when I did. If you started around Dominion War OP6, which had literally about a half foot of playable space on one side of the map, of course you only know how to joust. Every single OP since then has been a joust.
Yes.
Like,
good old OP2 with the orbital weapons platforms, and you had 6 inches of space to work with.
Right, see, that's what I'm saying, is that all of these OPs are just joust, 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 and a lot of players have been trained into that, which is not good. I'm sorry, I'm like going on about this for like ages and ages and ages, and I apologize. But the fact of the matter is, I'll still play Borg. I will still very commonly play Borg. I don't necessarily think they're automatically the best fleet in the game anymore, but they're still highly competitive.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, because nothing is. You haven't taken away their attack values. It's not like
you haven't taken away their durability.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's still a big deal.
Mm-hmm. So yeah,
you still
Borg.
have to put 14 to 16 hits on a Borg ship to kill it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's just a little bit easier to put those hits on the Borg because you have some idea where they're going if they don't take the right upgrade package.
That's a lot of sums and ifs right there for those keeping track at home.
I know. The good players will have ways to move the Borg. The bad players will run Borg just like they were used to, and they'll expect to win.
And in some cases, they will. I mean, depending on the skill of their opponent, if their opponent doesn't know to avoid the joust, like...
Well, just like we saw so many players going, the Borg, no problem. Okay.
Yeah. Long story short, we'll still play Borg at some point. We like Borg. Borg still exists. It's not like they're leaving anytime soon. But
we are the Borg. The Borg are still amazing. And that's just for that one guy who talked about how arrogant it says how arrogant it sounds when I say they're amazing. Guess what? They still are. Suck it.
They still do things other ships in the game don't do.
Yeah. Personally, I'll play Borg from time to time, but I'll play other things too. I like to build to the scenario, and I think what we're finding is a lot of these Q Continuum, they don't suit the Borg. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
So we've talked about the change to the Borg, what they do actually just to the Borg themselves, and what we think about it if we're still playing them or not. There's the other half of the equation, and that is the equation of everyone else in the universe.